Thank you. So welcome to this meeting of the Wye Catchment Nutrient Management Board being held on Wednesday, the 29th of April 2026. I'm Councillor Lisa Swinglehurst and the chair of this board. For those present in the meeting room, if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. The agenda and papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The board is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making a recording. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public present who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please raise your hand now so that any such person filming or photographing may be made aware. The meeting is also being filmed by 80 Seater Productions in relation to the Charter for the River Wye, and reference to that will be made under agenda item 10, but that explains why we have Charlotte present with her camera. Please ensure that your mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. And for remote participants, obviously just remind you to use the raise hand icon, and we'll keep an eye on that to call you in as and when you wish to make a contribution. Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from voting board members Mary Albright, Councillor Jackie Charlton, Councillor Andrew McDermott, Saul Herbert and Simon Evans, and we have Councillor Chris McFarlane in attendance remotely as a substitute for Councillor McDermott. Attendance in person. And we have Rosie Williams in attendance in person as a substitute for Saul Herbert of the Herefordshire Wildlife Trust. Is anyone aware of any other apologies that should be noted? Okay, so I'll welcome to the meeting Councillor Chris McFarlane and Rosie Williams, who are acting as substitutes today. Right, agenda item 2, the notes of the previous meeting. So this is to receive the notes of the previous meeting. They're in the agenda pack. Are you content that I sign the notes as an accurate record? Please show. Thank you. And I would just like to add my personal thanks very much. The notes are excellent quality. I had one matter arising from the notes, which is a question that had been raised regarding references in the DWPP to groundwater source protection zones in the English catchment. This is at paragraph 31.n in the notes. The question was whether or not guidance had ever been issued by the regulators in respect of the groundwater source protection zones in the DWPP, and that question is still just hanging. It wasn't because it didn't come in as a kind of a public, it just arose in the meeting. So if we could just sort of capture that somewhere and answer it if an answer is knowable.
Yeah, so if it's okay, I'll take that away and I'll come back to the board.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Okay, so agenda item 3, questions from members of the public. We've had 2 questions. They both received written responses. Thanks to the questions and also to the respondents. I have nothing further. Thank you. Agenda item 4. Nutrient Management Plan, Introduction of Approach, to update the Wye Catchment Nutrient Management Plan and to extract elements to form a new Nutrient Management Plan. This is a really critical piece of work for this board. It's our first opportunity to hear from Haskirning, who have the contract to deliver this piece of work. And so over to Oliver Bowers from Haskirning UK Limited to introduce themselves and the plan.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Oliver Bowers from Haskirning. I'm the lead on the catchment management plan work that's undergoing. So what I'll do is sort of briefly set you through sort of the work that's been going on that we've done so far on the catchment management plan, and a bit of an idea of sort of where we're going, and then tie that back in at the end as to how that relates to the nutrient management plan and what the intention is, essentially for pulling parts of the catchment management plan into a nutrient management plan. So there's 3 different stages that we're doing with the catchment management plan. We're in the first stage at the minute, which is the evidence review. So this has been a collation of various amounts of data and trying to sort of look at some broad sort of issues. And I'll give you a bit more details on that in a minute. Then once we've done the evidence review, which will basically tell us what the problems are. Obviously, we know what a lot of the problems are, but we'll be sort of trying to present a very factual and evidence-led report, which will ultimately tell us what the key issues are and the key pressures are within the catchment. At that point, then we will look at the sort of the optioneering assessment, and that will be initially a long list of options that will try and address the issues that have been identified in the evidence base. We'll look at issues that will sort of try and tackle more than one sort of known issue and see where we can try and get synergies in terms of solutions. And then a sort of an overall options appraisal criteria will be established. So that will look at for each solution, sort of how easily it can be implemented, the cost associated with doing so, the quantified removal that will be achieved from that. And this is a much sort of bigger project in terms of modelling that's going to be required in order to sort of quantify that and different iterations of that modelling as well, which ultimately, once it's gone through the appraisal criteria, will give us a sort of an understanding of the sort of the shortlist of solutions. There's a lot more to it in terms of engagement and back and forth and making sure that's evidence led, but ultimately we're trying to get to the point where we've got a shortlist of solutions that will be with the overall aim of trying to get the site back into favourable condition. There is sort of a few different factors that we're looking at. This is a catchment management plan rather than just a nutrient management plan. So we're looking at sort of 4 key themes. One of them is sort of looking at flooding, so with essentially sort of high flows, as well as sort of an increase in frequency of low flows that we're seeing in the catchment as well. So the first study area, we're looking at geomorphological constraints, so sort of barriers to fish migrations and that side of things. One of the key parts we were looking at is water quality. And then we'll also look at ecology and looking at species distribution, the numbers, sort of trends in those species as well, which are obviously designated species as part of the site's designated status. So yeah, that's what we'll try and obviously the idea is to get a shortlist to address those issues. That will be done to a subcatchment scale. So there's 10 different subcatchments that the entire Wye has been broken down into. And it's important to know that this is the entire Wye, the upper Wye, the Welsh side, the lower Wye on the English side, as well as the lug as well. So it's an all-encompassing catchment management plan. So that's been broken down into 10 different subcatchments, which broadly sort of work with the operational catchments. There's some areas where we've gone down to a finer scale, sort of broken down operational catchments, just where there needs to be a bit more of an intense look at certain water bodies or certain reaches of a catchment. So yeah, the 10 different catchments that we'll be looking at. So yeah, the intention is not only to sort of model at those catchments, but also provide the recommendations at those sort of 10 catchments as well, which then leads us on to what's going to be the action plan. So that action plan needs to be implementable, I suppose, is the most important thing. It has to be something that can be taken and can be used. And we're aware of lots of different initiatives going on in the catchment, has been going on. So the purpose is to try and sort of pull all of that together and provide this as sort of the definitive sort of action plan for the catchment. It will look at timescales, it'll look at funding opportunities, again, the quantification that comes back off the modelling from the previous stage. It'll look at responsibilities, monitoring, and how these actions can be monitored. There may well be a few data gaps, and sort of the work we've done so far suggests that will be the case. So parts of the action plan may be to sort of fill gaps. It may be a case that needs to be sort of feasibility studies, and that'll be the first recommendations of the action plan. And the plan is intended to be around about 10-year plan, which will be updated every sort of 3 to 4 years as well. So yeah, that's once the action plan's been done, that essentially is where we're going, and lots of consultation on that plan, which is essentially sort of the following stage of the draft action plan. I mean, in terms of where we're at with the evidence base, so we've done a bit of a sort of call for data, and we've got loads and loads of data come in. It's been really good sort of trying to see some of this. We've got some sort of core studies which form the basis of the assessment, and that's sort of supplemented with some other sort of anecdotal information and sort of very much sort of specific sort of those subcatchment specific data that's also been submitted as well. So we've sort of collated all of that. We've reviewed the data and sort of attribute it to different parts of the report that's been put together. So yeah, essentially it'll be the evidence base. The first report will be based off a lot of that data and those 4 sort of key themes that we've gone through before. In terms of sort of the timescales, that's still sort of being worked out, but the intention is to sort of have the optioneering assessment done for sort of the end of the summer, with the action plan foreshadowed after that, with sort of the period of stakeholder engagement as well. So I think the way we see it is that action plan will be sort of the overarching sort of plan for the entire catchment, and then as part of that, obviously, there is the need for the nutrient management plan, and the nutrient management plan will pull information from the catchment management plan. So in terms of the evidence base, the intention is to pull a lot of the nutrient sort of relevant information into a standalone evidence report for the nutrient management plan. Relatively simple given how we've sort of set it up, and with that in mind, should be quite a relatively simple task to sort of pull that information out. Then it'll follow, the intention is the nutrient management plan to follow a very sort of similar structure in terms of the optioneering sort of assessment, similar sort of assessment criteria. I think the potential sort of, not so much differences, but the nutrient management plan needs to be targeted towards achieving the sort of nutrient targets for the SAC. So that's what will be pulled out within the sort of solutions optioneering assessment for the nutrient management plan. That will be done as well as part of the catchment management plan, but the catchment management plan is sort of wider encompassing and will need to not only look at nutrient levels and sort of phosphorus targets, but also we'll need to look at the sort of the ideal targets for species and that side of things as well. So it'll be the nutrient plan will be a smaller part of that sort of wider modelling work that will be done for the catchment management plan. And then, yeah, the intention is again to sort of put the nutrient management plan actions into an action plan, and fully expecting there to be a lot of similarities between the findings of the catchment management plan and the findings of the sort of nutrient management plan, which is the way it needs to be really, because as I said, the catchment management plan is the sort of overarching plan for the catchment as well. So yeah, there's a few sort of bespoke little bits of work that we need to be done just to sort of fill in the gaps in that nutrient plan. So the additional modelling at the SAC targets is one of those. There's an intention to sort of try and quantify new growth within the catchment as well, particularly around Hereford. In the local plan period, I think there's quite significant growth sort of being considered around there. So just trying to do some modelling to work out what that is actually going to do to in-river concentrations. So we've got baseline water quality data and we can sort of see what the targets are, but if there's going to be an increase in concentrations from housing, that needs to be accounted for. Otherwise, when you do the modelling, there's going to be a bit of a gap, which essentially is from the new housing. So that's a little bit of work planned to sort of fill that gap as well. And then, yeah, sort of wider engagement that needs to be done on that side of things as well. In terms of the timescales, the nutrient management plan, it is going to be very dependent on the catchment management plan. So the catchment management plan will essentially come first, and then it'll be a case of pulling out that information. The way we've looked at the timescales is to try and sort of put in the nutrient management plan sort of bits when the catchment management plan is being reviewed. Essentially, it's going to be a very similar team that's going to be delivering sort of both of the reports. It needs to be the case given that they're the people that are sort of it's their sort of work, it's fresh with them, and efficiency wise, it makes sense to sort of use the same team. That obviously will essentially mean they can't do two things at once, so there will be a slight lag. I think in the programme it's about 2 to 3 weeks behind some of the catchment management plan reports, so the intention is to try and roughly deliver them at the same sort of time. And a lot of the learning from the catchment management plan can be passed over into the nutrient management plan as well to try and make it more efficient. I think that was most of the updates from me. I don't know if we're taking questions.
That's great. Thanks very much, Oliver. I've got a couple of questions, and I dare say other board members might have some questions. So I'm going to kick off, and then if you want to join in. And these may be points that you'll take away. But it struck me very much that we talk somewhat lazily about phosphate, orthophosphate, SRP, but we also have to be very mindful of phosphorus and total phosphorus, and what account is that going to? What account can you take of that within the plan? So that is would not relate therefore to the SAC and Water Framework Directive targets for the river, which relate clearly to phosphate, but nevertheless we know there's a role for total phosphorus, and there needs to be understood we need to have actions for that. That's point number one. Point number two, there's been recent press coverage around levels of ammonia in the catchment, and will that be addressed within the plan? And point number three, in the last meeting, the Nutrient Management Board agreed to the principle of aligning the plan with current legislative frameworks and targets, including EIP 2025. So we're not talking exclusively about that, but just as a general principle, an alignment with national legislative targets. Will that be included? And also, I think I'm right in saying that Natural England are undertaking condition assessments of the Wye and Lug, and in the light of that work, they may be making an evaluation about whether or not we need nitrogen targets. And is that something that you're cited on and would be able to incorporate if the timing worked out in such a way that you would be able to do that? I don't know what the timing of the Natural England work is, but so it's sort of something you should probably be aware of.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. Okay, so come back on the first point in terms of the phosphate versus the total phosphorus. So obviously a lot of the data we will have is phosphate, but there are some studies, as we've been doing the evidence review, the catchment management plan, which is looking at the sort of apportionment between what is your sort of your orthophosphate and sort of what's some of the other forms of phosphate. So some of the sort of sediment-bound phosphate, which is looking at that balance of what makes up total phosphorus. So there's certainly evidence that we can put in on that, and yeah, we sort of understand the need to understand both. There might be a few other things that we can do, so we'll sort of take that away and see how that can be addressed. In terms of the ammonia, so I didn't cover it off before, but yes, we'll certainly be looking at ammonia and forms of nitrogen where we can do. So some of the condition assessment work that has been done will be looked at. There is the intention to look at trends since the 2014 nutrient management plan for both phosphorus and ammonia to see whether we've got increases or decreases in the trends there. So yeah, fully aware of the need to look at ammonia and nitrogen as well as the nutrients. In terms of sort of the targets, so obviously we are writing the plan to try and achieve those SSE targets. In terms of how the modelling works, it can be quite flexible for the targets. So if we need to look at other targets or at least consider other targets in comparison to SSE targets, that can be done. So we're not fixed on using SSE targets, but obviously that's the where we're trying to go with the plan. And the condition assessments. So we've had foresight of a few of the condition assessments, both from NRW and from Natural England. So it's essentially broken down into the upper Wye, the lower Wye, and the lug. The lug is more advanced than the lower Wye, so we've had a lot of the data in from that side of things, both in terms of ammonia, phosphates, there's some BOD stuff in there as well. So various water quality data. It has been made available for the lug, less so for the Wye, but we're sort of chasing that up and trying to incorporate that where we can do. And then, yeah, looking at similar sort of situation with the NRW for the upper Wye. There is some sort of data, but that might be a couple of years old. So trying to see where we can sort of fill that gap. And like I said before, we're trying to look at trends using monitoring locations since 2014, which will be done up probably until December 2025. There may be an opportunity to use slightly more up-to-date data than that, but yeah, it gives us an idea of those trends and sort of fill in some of the gaps between the condition assessments where that isn't available. I think, yeah, where information can be made available, obviously we're doing the evidence base. There will be a slight lag with the nutrient management plan. So if there is an opportunity to incorporate some of that really crucial data, we will try our best to do so. And obviously the outcomes of that condition assessment can be quite important with what's going to be going into the optioneering assessment and sort of the overall plan. So yeah, I think there will be some opportunities to try and incorporate that. But yeah, there will have to be a cost for some point.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Oliver. I've got a question from Liz Bickerton.
Yeah, I just wondered, because Anne's got her hand up, does Anne want to say anything that is pertinent to those points at the moment before I jump in? Or
I could ask her.
Yeah.
Just a very couple of quick comebacks on what Oliver was saying. So you were talking about the condition assessments for the Welsh Upper Wye. So I think you should have all that data in the evidence report that was done last year by Arcadis. So you've got that Welsh evidence base. The last compliance assessment was done in 24. I think we published it last year. The next one will be due end of 27.
Yep.
So it's every 3 years.
Yeah.
So-
So the Welsh Wye evidence base, as I said, was the sort of 3 or 4 key documents that we'll be looking
Yeah.
at. That really is one of the key ones for the upper part of the
Yeah,
Wye.
you should
So,
have everything
Yeah.
that we've done. You should have. The next
Yep.
one isn't due till the end of 2027.
yeah. And yeah,
Okay.
got 24 condition assessment. I said we're just maybe looking at trends within essentially only a year's worth of data. But yeah, just see if we could fill any gaps there and look at any trends since.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's
very
great.
useful.
Thanks, Anne. So Liz.
Yeah. Oliver, my question really was about timescales. You've very much made the point about the catchment action plan, and then following on the nutrient management plan action plan. 2 parts of this really. Firstly, about timescales in terms of making sure that those action plans are available to go into budget cycles. That's important, especially the catchment side of it, I guess. But more pertinently, I wanted to ask about making sure that we act on actions really. Does the nutrient management plan action plan, the other way around, does the catchment plan actually have to wait for the nutrient management action plan before actions can be actioned, if that makes sense? So do we end up with an action plan that we can't action because we're waiting for the nutrient management plan part of it because of the link?
So yeah, there will be quite a lot of similarities. But so I mean, the catchment management plan will cover the nutrient side of things. It's more the reporting side of the nutrient management plan. So a lot of that modelling work will be done as part of the catchment management plan, will be incorporated into catchment management plans, action plans. What the nutrient management plan essentially is pulling out that relevant data, putting it into standalone reports with a very small amount of sort of additional modelling, like bespoke modelling work that might need to be done. So the intention is for the catchment management plans actions to be sort of, they will be recommended actions. They will have timescales associated with them, quantification. There shouldn't necessarily be too much of a lag. And even if there is I don't think there is too much of a timescale difference really between the publication of the catchment management plans, action plans, and the nutrient management plan. The difference there might come with sort of stakeholder engagement and sort of adoption. But yeah, there shouldn't really be sort of a delay in getting going for what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. Chair's discretion. Question from Kate Speak-Adams.
Thank you. In the water quality section, from agriculture's point of view, are you using Farmscoper as part of that, or have you got more up-to-date, relevant options going into it so that we get something more innovative and useful coming out?
Yeah, so what the intention for the sort of water quality side of the modelling is to use the WISI model, which was coming off the back of the Understanding the Wye project, which was really sort of innovative piece of work that was done a couple of years ago. That sort of set out the scale of interventions that might need to be required, and that sort of looks at it quantifies the benefits in terms of water quality and in terms of flows as well. So that's the intention with that. I mean, Farmscoper can be used, and maybe we needed sort of a smaller scale, but I think in terms of the scales that we're looking at here, a WISI mod is probably more appropriate to the scale of the catchment.
Thank you.
Okay, Helen Dale.
Thanks for the update, Oliver. I'm definitely pleased to know that there will be a document that pulls together all the evidence. So that would be great. But so as I should say, I work for the Country Land and Business Association. So I'm just keen to know, perhaps not now, but have more detail around your consultation and engagement. And I guess the engagement side, particularly at that point where you're going from your long list options and working through that ground truthing of what is actually going to work on the ground, what do we need to put in place to make it workable. Just really keen to have an input amongst the wider agricultural sector at that stage. So at some point when you're ready, if we could have more sight of what your engagement plan looks like, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it's something that we've been discussing internally around. We need a plan that is going to land well, and sort of perception of that plan. So completely agree with what you're saying. We are sort of right now looking at that engagement plan, starting to put some plans in place. So we don't have all the answers right now, but yeah, the intention is to do that in the next coming days. And I think the intention is just sort of make that engagement plan sort of more publicly known, so people will have the opportunity and start factoring timescales for that.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, engagement through the nutrient management board is the obvious route. As you come up ready to engage, that you do it via this board and to the members on this board, and that should hopefully be more than adequate. So Pat Sterling.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ollie. Encouraged to hear that there are going to be total oxidized nitrogen and potentially ammoniacal nitrogen targets, and that the interrelation between those hopefully will be articulated well in this. My question is both to Haskonian but also to Natural England and NRW, because there's been discussion about setting targets for nitrogen. Are we any closer to that? If not, Ollie, you referred to potentially using targets from elsewhere for similar sacks or what have you. Could you just, if we don't have that, might ask Natural England and NRW to respond first, but if we don't have those in time for this document, could you also just expand a little bit on how we might go about getting something appropriate for the catchment, as we've obviously, we focus a lot on P, as mentioned, and we'd love to have nitrogen targets articulated well.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. So on behalf of Natural England, as I've said before, we're going to do a review following the completion of the condition assessment for both the Wye and Lug. So like Oliver said, the Lug is largely complete, but the Wye we're still working through that assessment. So following that assessment, we'll do appraisal of whether we think it will probably be a total nitrogen target would be appropriate or needed for the river. So we'll keep you posted.
Okay.
Any more?
I suppose, but in terms of what that might mean for the modelling work, yeah, depending on sort of the timescales, we can maybe try and incorporate something. So it maybe sounds like I don't know the fine details of when the condition assessments will be done, but if it's sort of released after the modelling work has been done, it's always be quite hard to come back and sort of remodel that. And might push the timescales on for the entirety of both the plans. But I mean, if there is an opportunity there to maybe even sort of test a few sort of targets, that can be done. It obviously needs to be worked and sort of communication done with Natural England and NRW on that. But yeah, the WYSI and the modelling software has capabilities to look at that. So yeah, it might be a case that we don't have to sort of do definitive sort of targets if they're not in place yet, but we can play around with certain things.
Okay, thank you. And Christine Hugh-Jones.
Hello, thank you very much. When you first introduced the project at the Wye Catchment Partnership, there was a bit of discussion about the catchment and the SAC. And I know that the Lug comes within Herefordshire, and as somebody who lives on the Welsh Lug, I wondered how you were going to take into account portions of the catchment that don't have condition assessments and don't have the same amount of data on them. Thank you.
Yeah, so as I said, the entirety catchment is covered. So the Welsh upper part of the Lug forms part of the assessment. We will be looking at sort of data from, I suppose, on the NRW side, so on the water bodies, WFT water bodies, will be assessed as part of that. Monitoring locations within those water bodies, we'll be looking at the trends within that. We'll be looking at sage source apportionment within those areas as well. So there's key pieces of evidence that will be used right throughout the catchment. We're not just going to be looking at the SAC condition assessment. It goes much wider than that, and lots of other evidence that can be brought in and will be brought in for examples such as the upper part of the Lug.
Yeah, my point is really, if you don't look after the headwaters from where everything comes, then the lower waters will suffer even more.
No, absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have any questions? Anything else? No? Okay. In which case I'm going to say thank you very much, Oliver. Please keep us posted as you progress. And yeah, if you need to come back in, if you want another opportunity to address the board, just to let us know, and you'd be very welcome. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now moving on to agenda item 5. I very much welcome Dr. Runak Nayak from the University of the West of England, Bristol, who's come in person. It's very lovely to see you. Thank you, because we've already seen each other on Teams so far. This is another kind of really exciting moment, I think, for the board and for anyone who who's engaged with the rivers. There was £1 million given by both governments to look into a living lab for research into agricultural inputs within the River Wye catchment, and Dr. Naik is here to introduce us to his work and how they're going to approach that with partners. Dr. Naik.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. So I'm Ronak. I'm a senior lecturer in farming systems at the University of West of England, Bristol. And very briefly, I'm an environmental sociologist, which means my research focuses on how environmental policy plays out in practice, whether it actually works, and whether it's fair to the people it affects. So UWE Bristol has been awarded the this research program in the Wye Catchment, and it runs up until 2029. So we've just been awarded it a month ago. So it's really great to hear all the brilliant stuff that's already been happening. What the program at UWE aims to do effectively is to work directly with farmers to test what interventions would actually work on the ground. So there is a long list that we're going through. And the aim is to generate that evidence that can inform policy and governance, not just for the Wye, but also for catchment programs nationally, which is one of the requirements that the DEFRA had put in the call. The core approach to this is the use of living labs. So the aim is to work across 3 farms with the farmers, co-designing the solutions rather than imposing them. Our partners include Hartpury University and College, Hertfordshire Rural Hub, and we've also been in touch with the Nutrient Management Board, with DEFRA and Welsh Government are funding it, Natural England and NRW. So we are still in that project setup phase, which is because it's the first month of it. I guess what I wanted to share was that this project and the program is not necessarily about pointing fingers. It's about understanding what is genuinely feasible for farming businesses and what support is needed to make that change happen, and what the evidence actually shows. So in effect, again, this is a co-design project, so the farmers are not research subjects in this program. They're the co-designers, so it's their knowledge and their experience that would be treated as expertise. So their involvement is very much there right from the start. Of course, at the same time, our focus is to keep this evidence credible and rigorous, and that is what we hope to achieve by engaging with bodies such as the NMB. So in terms of what we are looking for currently, we are currently in the phase of planning. The first 5 to 6 months is participatory, so it's about having workshops, because we do not want to redo what has already been done. There is the Lantra report. There's quite a bit that's already been done, so we're currently going through all of that evidence. And I guess from the NMB as a body, the most immediate opportunity is being involved in those participatory workshops. So we'll be in touch through Councillor Swinglehurst and the team about when these workshops would be hosted over the next 5 months. We are working with the Hertfordshire Rural Hub regarding who to involve, when to involve, and so it's very much in that phase. So that's kind of the information I can give about the program currently, and I'll open it up for questions, which should probably be a better way of answering anything.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, this, clearly it's very early stages, and this is such an interesting meeting because we're hearing about incredibly important things that are happening that relate to each other and that are all at that kind of stage of development. And so what you discover as you do that project and ground truth working with farmers is going to be so vital to the next iteration of any plan and how it feeds into our understanding. So something around the timing of that and making sure that the flow of information as it starts to happen comes via the board or the catchment partnership, wherever it needs to sit, so that we have the best possible quality of data and understanding at any point in time going forward. And I think certainly, speaking for myself, Herefordshire Council, we're very happy to facilitate any conversations or workshops that might be required. Has anyone got any questions or points that they would like to raise at this point? Yes, Councillor McFarlane.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered what selection criteria would be used to select the 3 farms that you're going to work with.
Thank you. So that is, again, something that is going to be based on the outcome of the first 5 months in the workshop. So we haven't really selected the work or the farm sites yet. Prior to selecting farm sites, we really need to understand, do a deep dive into the interventions that exist, that have been suggested. So the Mott MacDonald report, for example, has a long list that is produced. So through that process and through working with the farmers and the other partners, and then assessing what's feasible, those are the criteria that will be used to select the farms, right? So we're very much at the start, so we're still in the process of defining what that will look like.
Thank you. Anne Weedy.
I think just a quick question. Just wanted to make sure that you're engaging with the farmers on the Welsh side as well, and that they'll have as much opportunity to be involved in this.
Yes, thank you. It's a very valid point. And yes, we are looking at both the English and the Welsh side of the Wye and the Lug, which is why we are engaging with various partners. But thank you for raising that. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, Louise Bodnar, Voice of the Wye.
Thank you. My concern as the voice of the river and the voice for all the other species in the river is the framing of this project on what's genuinely feasible for farm businesses. How will you prevent the needs of all of the species on the river being placed as secondary to business as usual or tweaks to business as usual when even the diffuse pollution plan and the Welsh evidence state really clearly that business as usual and changes to business as usual will not solve the problems for the river, and we need really radical change that's likely to be really unpalatable to some sectors of the farming community and need huge adaptation within the farming community, changes to farm businesses that are not considered easy or feasible. How can a project based on the needs of farm businesses create enough change for the river to actually succeed in finding on-farm solutions that will restore the river? It's not likely to be palatable to set aside, let's say 50 metres either side of the river, or take land out of production or change the type of farming done or move arable away from the river. There are so many elements necessary that aren't palatable, that won't be genuinely feasible for farm businesses. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for raising that question. It is something that we have been discussing quite a bit within the team for the last month. And even while looking at the DEFRA tender, while writing the proposal, these are things that were considered. So the whole purpose of the first 5 to 6 months, the reason that we have the participatory approach is to involve all as many relevant stakeholders as possible. So it's not just the farmers that will be involved, but all the other partners too. So currently we are in the phase of mapping out who those partners are. And by that, I mean, there's already quite a bit of evidence on that identifies who those partners are. The workshops will be involving a representative sample of these stakeholders, and the recommendations that come out of this, the long list, the interventions that are selected out of this, will be based on that co-designed participatory approach. We are still in kind of very early days, it is hard to give a more defined answer at this stage, but I do take your point, and it is something that we are considering throughout this process. So the living labs part of it, that will only commence in month 7. So that's still a while for that. And the technical team who will be leading that living labs phase of it will also attend and be a part of the workshops. So the idea is to have a wide range of perspectives in those workshops, to then assess what's feasible and what works from a farming perspective and from the perspective of the other stakeholders too. Yes, that does mean there will be trade-offs. That does mean, we'll have to have those uncomfortable conversations. But that first 5 to 6 months is very much about creating that safe space to be able to do that. And that's what UWE Bristol will be leading in terms of creating that space.
Thank you. Just a tiny point that I just want it to be remembered within this new project, that the farm scope and modelling that was developed with farmers, and lots of options were within that, and it was narrowed down and down after consultation with farmers to keep the options really palatable. And all of those things are now possible as subsidy elements for farmers, but this farm scope and modelling shows that the implementation of all of those measures by every farmer in the catchment won't solve the problem. And that's partly because options that were unpalatable were removed at those early stages. It's really important that any further research that's designed to influence what we actually do in this catchment to restore the river doesn't get so diluted by what's palatable that when we model it, it doesn't make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you for raising the point again. And could I ask if it would be possible to have a conversation about this offline at some stage? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions? Pat Sterling?
Great to have you here, and thanks for bringing the project to this forum. I wanted to sort of point out that we've just heard from the team at Haskoning, who are going through the very rigorous job of pulling together all of the current evidence, establishing where there are evidence gaps in an extremely detailed process, and a very quite an open one. So that's all of that data has all been pulled from every member of the Wye Catchment Partnership, or most of whom, in fact, I think all organisations here are represented in, and have had the opportunity to put that data to the team at Haskoning, and they are in the process of then feeding that back to all of the partners. So that will come back quite soon, and there's going to be, I think, the best yet gathering of evidence for everything that's available in the Wye after several sort of rounds of this. So I just wanted to ask the question, can we avoid you having to go down that path as well? Obviously, you've got to do your due diligence, make sure from your perspective and the project's perspective that you've got everything that you possibly need. But I sense that we have an opportunity here today, when we've got the two projects, one after another, being presented. It seems to me that if we don't take the opportunity to bring those together, we've missed a trick. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I think Ollie's still on the call, so ask whether you've already contacted Haskoning, and if not, whether we can facilitate that.
Thank you. Another really good point. Yes. So the short answer is yes. We have. So the Nutrient Management Board has very kindly shared the current iteration of the evidence that's been collected by Haskoning, and we are awaiting the next set of documents and things that come along. So yes, we are aware of it, and we are in constant engagement with the Nutrient Management Board about that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think, and the other kind of third wheel, if you like, is Mott MacDonald. But hopefully, we don't all need to do everything from the start if we collaborate.
No, and I think I just wanted to reiterate that the Wye Catchment Partnership, of course, is here for that. It does represent, it is the stakeholder body for the catchment across all of the objectives that is held there, and the objective is very clearly one of natural restoration in a way which works for all of the partners and all of the stakeholders that are involved. So it feels like that's the right place for UWE to be engaging and ensuring the widest set of stakeholder engagement. So I'd encourage an engagement with the Wye Catchment Partnership as soon as possible and in as open a possible fashion. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to that by saying that is again, I think we are in conversation through the Nutrient Management Board about meeting the Wye Catchment Partnership. So I'll be meeting them on the 29th of May. For the first, and then we're planning a webinar, a lunchtime webinar to then further discuss the project. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Helen Dale.
Not a question, just an offer really, again, from the CLA, and I'm sure, Georgie, I don't speak for the NFU, but anything we can do to help with that farmer and landowner engagement to make sure that those options are realistic and based on real world factors, then that would be great. The offer's there. Please get in touch.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
that's great. Thank you. So I think that's everything, Marvellous. So I think that's been brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Stark. I think it's great that we've met you, you've met us, and hopefully you can tell that everyone's very keen to add whatever value they can to the project as you take it on from here. So thank you so much for your attendance today. It's been very worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, so now we have, it is almost as though this was arranged and organised. It's incredible. We have Dan Smith from the Herefordshire Rural Hub, who's one of the partners working with UWE on a nutrient balance project, which is the outcomes of farm gate nutrient balance work. So over to you, Dan. Thank you.
Yep. Hi all. Dan Smith. I'm farm facilitator at Herefordshire Rural Hub. Also a farmer in the Wye and Us catchment, which I'm probably more known for, and doing some quite innovative things around soil and water health and those things. So probably quite engaged in this. I do have some slides. Slides, if they're available. There we go. Oh, although information missing. I will, here we go. So 2 years ago, we started a project at the Hub trying to engage with farmers around data from their holdings. Now, this came off the back of Refocus with Lancaster University. And what we particularly wanted was as a localized data set and a way of engaging with farmers. So from then up until now, we have covered over 140 holdings, which is just over 30,000 hectares within Herefordshire, which we believe to work. It works out just under 20% of all farmed area in Herefordshire. We were particularly careful to go right across the sector. To some degree, it could be said that we would look at some low-hanging fruit and some people who are particularly engaged, which was absolutely the truth. But also, we were very targeted. Alongside other projects where we were looking at hard-to-reach farmers, and we were quite engaged within some of the bigger farming enterprises, and have been really quite pleasantly surprised how engaged people have been right across the sector. But on from that, how some of the best meetings we've had have been referrals from other farmers who have considered that perhaps potentially their neighbour might be worth seeing, for example. So we feel like we've tried to cover that in the best way that we can. And actually what we do is we use Planet FarmGate tool, which is the tool that we feel is best available, and also the tool that was recommended by Lancaster to show similar evidence to their refocus work. We go to farms and we essentially audit all their imports and all their exports for a given year. And at the end of that, you are given a total nutrient load for the farm, and then a breakdown of that kilograms per hectare for NP and K across all their hectarage. That's the data that comes out of it. The reason that we believe that the data is quite robust is because we are able, around a kitchen table scenario, to go directly to feed tickets and to go directly to manure analysis on farm and input that data as best as we can from the information that each individual farmer has. That's the kind of the premise of how it works. So the data that, sorry, next slide. So I want the clicker. Yeah, so unsurprisingly, this is our analysis of the data, sort of headline stuff. Unsurprisingly, the biggest contributor to both N and P was in bought-in feed. Obviously, a significant proportion coming in organic fertilizer as well, and then a surprisingly large amount of N being fixed from legumes, which is potentially driven by some of the subsidy changes. So they were the big. We could identify them as the big imports, and that was really across all of these holdings. Next slide, please. And then, unsurprisingly, also come to the data around the exports, and again the big here is manure, and certainly for P, and a lot of nutrients leaving in livestock, not a huge amount leaving in milk, but also harvested crops. So that's the information that we know, and to be honest with you, we probably could have predicted those things anyway, but what we didn't have was the actual real data around that, and what that looked like per holding, and what that looked like in terms of management across the catchment, certainly farm to farm. And then, because we had the privilege of doing this farmer to farmer, actually what they were doing with a lot of that information, if they knew it, if they didn't know it, and how they were managing some of those things. Next slide, please. So the headline, really, so this is in comparison to Refocus, with their suggestion that there was plus 6.2 kilograms of P per hectare excess. Our findings across this 30,000 hectares is actually, from the farm data, it is minus 6 kilograms of P per hectare. However, we also discovered through that we are currently sitting at plus 82 kilograms of N per hectare also across that, which is quite a significant number. Next slide, please. It's just to highlight that modelling. This is again against the Refocus 2023, their reduction over that time, and then the same period, highlighting our total difference in P, but also also across kilograms for them. Next slide, please. So, what are we doing with that information, and how are we moving forward, I think, is probably the most important thing. We were, as I said, we were particularly interested in trying to get good information across all of the farms. We're also particularly interested in it being correct and robust. So we have actually, our data currently sits at Lancaster, and they are going through through it, and they will produce us a report on, and we're having a dialogue back and forth about what that actually looks like, and whether some of the things that we believe to be true are correct. You know, they're experts in that field, and we're really hoping that they can do that work well. We were very well engaged across the supply chain. So Tesco's particularly supported the project with some funding, but actually more so with pressure through the supply chain. So through a lot of their suppliers, we were then able to go and do a lot of balances on people who were directly supplying them, which we felt was very, very important. And we did some engagement around whether farmers felt it was beneficial for their businesses and the information and their learnings. Now, the truth is that we feel that actually having the data is a really powerful tool, and it's a great discussion piece. But the biggest element of this by far has been engagement with farmers around many of the things that get talked about in this room, but also the ability to identify where there may need to be more learning and more discussion. And therefore, we've been putting on events around certain elements that we feel can really create change on farm and actually help farming businesses, but certainly help the bigger picture of nutrient management. And whilst collecting more data is good, and we will continue to do so, that's really the biggest element moving forward, is when we get the data from Lancaster and we get to some more of the real hard evidence, is how we transfer that back to farmers and start to them to create a bit of change within their system, or maybe even just be more knowledgeable about some of the things that are happening on farm, which I'm very, very happy to talk about. It's been particularly positive. And just an example of that, next slide, please. I'm just going to show you a very quick case study of a farm. So this is back in, some of you may know this farm, back in 2022. And the important figures on this, if you look, is that they were running an excess of 32,000 kilograms of P in their system. And their so that was an excess of 29 kilograms of P per hectare. So that was an excess for a given year that they were potentially, that could be leaching into waterways, or et cetera, et cetera. That was their baseline at that point. Next slide, please. So through some business change and some analysis of that, and actually wanting to do better for the environment, but certainly for business as well. In 2 years, they managed to entirely reverse that. So in the end, they had a minus 29 kilograms per hectare of P. And the importance there is that they're actually still a viable business, still being productive, but they've made some very conscious changes about how they run their business. And we can use data like this and others who are particularly engaged to hopefully really transfer some of this information across sector and across farmers within Herefordshire to try and create some of that change that perhaps we need to see.
Thanks, Dan. That's really interesting, and what a very worthwhile project this has been. And I think the thing is, when we look at the Lancaster data and the height at which that comes out, and you think, we need better data, more granularity. We need to really understand this on a farm by farm basis, and this is the start of that knowledge. And I think deepening that knowledge is going to be enormously important to choosing the right actions and actions that work both for the river and for agriculture. Would it be possible? Is there a case study for Gardston? Because that's so extreme, that example, and I was just dying to know what are the changes to business. We don't need to know it right now this minute, but I think it would be very good knowledge to have, and very, very good knowledge to have that feeding into the nutrient management plan as it develops, as we start to look at options. We need to understand the efficacy of options where we already have a sense of their efficacy in a real life study.
Yeah, great question. And actually, part of the process going forward is that we're going to develop those case studies further. We've had a lot of interest, not just from this catchment, but other catchments on the work. So we're trying to distill that into information that farmers and other stakeholders can use. Garnston being one of them. There are other dairies. There are certainly people who I think the data represents that kind of idea that we've just been dealing with farmers who are already engaged. You know, we're seeing farmers still with quite large excesses, and we're doing case studies around potentially what they're doing, and some of them that are in minus to try and really get that, so we can have more of a greater understanding across the sector. And videos, yes, we're creating videos for YouTube where anyone can.
Okay, that would be great. I mean, I'd love, if you could keep us informed, but also loop into Haskoning and feed into that process. I don't know if Oliver's still here, still on the call. So I think that kind of information is going to be of enormous benefit, really, to our understanding as to what options we need to look at. Right, we got Andrew McRobb.
Thanks, Chair. Dan, I'm going to give you a bit more hard time because the Garnston thing looks absolutely fantastic, but we have no idea how they achieved it. And on the face of it, it makes it all look easy. So why have we got a problem? If every farmer did what they did in 2 years' time, we'd have a fantastic catchment. I'm sure it's not quite that easy, but that's really my question. What is it? What was the magic bullet they had? Thank you.
I mean, they were going through some system change anyway. To be honest with you, that was almost that was a combination of different cattle management, bought in feed, but also the decision to stop any imported pea in terms of artificially. What's quite interesting there is that they're particularly engaged around the rest of the information that goes with that, the kind of the bigger picture. Which we're going to hear more in a minute. But actually, I think I'm not saying it's all that easy, but actually the thing that makes it easy is the knowledge transfer. Farmers will do things if they see other farmers do them. We've held events at Garston and people have absolutely gone away and been like, well, yes, we can do that. In the same way we've held dairy events. There's a lot of things around bought in feed and different values. Dairy farmers have been away and have absolutely changed their practice, and we're beginning to map that. So I think, I'm not saying it's all easy, but without the engagement, it's not going to happen anyway. So we feel like we're trying to do something, if that makes sense.
Pat.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Dan, and really good to see the numbers. I wanted to ask just two quick questions. One, or say, I suppose state one thing and then ask a question. The first is, for talking to my neighbours, certainly you mentioned at the very end there that economics is playing a role here, and certainly feels like this is a very good direction for farms that are currently bringing in fertiliser, because it's certainly not going to get any cheaper anytime soon as we see what's happening around the world. So I just wanted to sort of state that in support of this idea of kind of, can we move towards something that's more economic and actually also potentially better for the environment. And on that second point, I just wanted to ask, and I might have missed it because as we was through the slides there, are there soil tests which support kind of the as we see this this net decrease or drawdown, I suppose, of phosphorus rather, is it reflected in soil samples?
Great question. Kate's going to talk a little bit in a moment about a project. This is a tool within a box, if that makes sense. This gives us an in with a farmer, but also it gives us a kind of an overall picture what's happening. I'm a particularly passionate soil farmer, so there's absolutely, when I go to a farm, I will get shown soil results and etc. And we talk about there while I'm performing this. We haven't gone down the road yet of quite linking this necessarily to that, except to say some of those things might take a little bit longer, but it's absolutely something that we can map as part of this. And again, we need more of those tools like the project here to start putting some of those things together to get really tangible answers to questions that have been around for quite a long time. ones that can actually really create the change that we need to see.
Okay, Louise?
Thanks, Dan, for a great presentation. And it's a really genuine and well-meaning project, and I really appreciate what you're trying to do with it. And it's, it clearly works. Are you concerned about the time frame? You mentioned that you started collecting the data about 10 years ago, and you've got 140 holdings now. 30,000 hectares, 10% of the catchment, a bit less than 10% of the catchment. It's not going to take another 90 years, is it, to get the other 90%? How fast do you think this can be? Do you think rolling this out, waiting for this to roll out, is the answer?
Sorry, just for clarity. So we've done that in 2 years.
Okay.
So 20% within 2 years of a representation of quite a lot, which is actually the decision to the best way we feel to now, rather than just collecting data from all those farms. If we want to see the behavioural change, what we need to do is the knowledge exchange. We need to do the workshops, which we are doing, to get as many people here as possible. And we're very well engaged through the supply chain. So we're also having discussions with feed suppliers, because we identify that as so we've got the data that means that then we can accelerate some of those conversations.
Thank you. That was one of my wonderings, whether this could be speeded up by action on feed. I mean, I don't know whether it's just a case of farmers not choosing it, but obviously that depends on what's in the store when you go, etc. But it seems a really quick solution that if we could have low phosphate levels in feeds, then we'd have lower phosphate levels in manure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of work been done with that within poultry. As you know, there's a lot of room within other sectors to do that. We're having conversations. I had a meeting yesterday with a team working with Arla, especially looking at just that. And as I say, this is giving us the leverage that we can begin to have those conversations, not even within this catchment, much broader, to try and put some facts on some of those conversations.
And that's really powerful. That's if reductions through the feed changes that they can put into rules for their suppliers, that could really scale it out. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, one of our case studies particularly is a dairy farmer who has really made change around that, and they're the kind of the good news stories that we're trying to put out into the community.
Right, Pat, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one quick further question. Obviously, we talk about phosphate a lot because there are targets and all that sort of thing. It's been a focus. You guys discovered something, as you described as, really sort of interesting, perhaps unexpected, around what's happening with nitrogen. We're seeing the numbers in the water reflect that. There's been a steady build of nitrogen, and perhaps that's got to do with this focus on phosphate. What's your sense, both, I suppose, from your experience with Garnston and how they've reacted to these numbers around nitrogen, and more broadly around the catchment and the project that you guys are rolling out? How do you feel nitrogen should play a role in that work?
I'm not a scientist, but from a farm perspective, and from doing this research, the end figure surprised me, let's say, in terms of excess. I'm aware of its environmental impact, but I'm more aware of the financial budgeting impact to a farm. So actually, those big excesses are quite easy to talk about within agriculture, in terms of I can very, very quickly put a figure on that and begin to talk about that within a budgeting point of view, which actually might change behavior slightly quicker. The flip side of that is through our conversations and things that I've been learning about, I've been surprised how unsurprised people are about the NXS, but actually there is just less knowledge around what that figure means compared to the P. So I don't have the answer, except that there doesn't seem to be as much of a conversation, and I would identify that as a concern and something we need to also learn more about.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I think that, we mentioned earlier about nitrogen targets within all of the work being talked around in terms of the plans being made and the research being set out. And so I think bringing together that ground truth of what's going on with that work and that need for a much better understanding around not just phosphate but the other things that are happening is utterly vital. And if we all come at it from both above and below, then I think we can make a really big difference. And the science that we do have suggests, and has been played out in several forums now. It's that phosphate is a bit of a red herring at this point, because we've got pretty stringent targets that we're really doing a better and better job at getting to. But we've got a nitrogen vulnerable zone without nitrogen targets, and so nobody's really focused on it, and it feels like this could be a wake-up call. So thank you so much for bringing that.
Pat, I was also going to refer to the nitro vulnerable zones. Those regulations have been in place for a long time, so I was particularly surprised that we were seeing excesses, and I think it just emphasises that regulation can do some, but actually because it wasn't looking at livestock feed, it has missed an opportunity to reduce excesses over 20 years. God, I can't even remember. I was inspecting NVZs for the EA when they first came out, so they've been going a while, and I think it's just a really great lesson to be learned that when we put our blinkers on and we don't look at the whole picture, we miss something, and then 10 years later we're going, bloody hell, we've missed that.
And I just want to mention that Mary gave her apologies. She's watching her boy play cricket and couldn't make it. It's the first one of these she's missed for many years, and it's a very sad thing that she has. I'll make sure she gets the timestamp on the YouTube video to hear this, because of course the building industry has been hammered by those regulations, and we need to take a really big step back and go, hang on a second, what works for the environment and what works for the industries in our catchment, and the people in our catchment, such that it's going to all work together, because I think it can, if we just take the time to be grown up about all of that and go, hang on a second, let's do this right. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much, Dan. Are you presenting the next as well? Kate's going to do that. That's fantastic, aren't we lucky? Thanks, Dan. That was really very interesting, and again, I think we can only really echo what Pat said about the importance that we have to look at nitrogen as the nutrient management board, as well as phosphate, as well as phosphorus, which is the subject of the next presentation.
Thank you, everybody. I think there's some slides coming. Thanks, Ben. Just wanted to provide a bit of an update on a project that we've been working on with the Herefordshire Council team, and their funding has helped deliver this. So we work with a lot of very innovative farmers. We've, engaged for a long time with the Lancaster University work and the Refocus work, which you've just heard born into our Farmgate programme. But again and again, farmers who are engaged in those programmes were asking questions around total P. What is it? How do I access it? Am I really losing it? How much is even in our soils? So we approached the council, and they very kindly supported a bit of a pilot doing some additional total P testing across a number of farms to try and help close some of those knowledge gaps that are felt on the ground when it comes to soil testing, nutrient management, and are we or are we not, and how much are we losing in terms of nutrient to water. So it was very much building and working alongside that Lancaster University piece that the Environment Agency have been supporting over the last 3 years. Next slide, please. So across 16 holdings, we've undertaken total P and available P soil testing with the help of our Cobb Agri business doing most of the agronomy on those holdings anyway. So we're trying to build maybe another locally owned data set for the farming community. But we've got Farmgate, now we're hopefully building more of a total P data set as well. But you can try and see the span there. We tried to make sure we covered a range of different soil types and different farm enterprises and sort of history. So some of those are dairy farms, poultry units, arable only, beef and lamb, north, south, east and west. So hopefully we've got a good span and representation across the catchment. Next slide. The full report's been appended to the meeting papers today, but just to sort of reiterate, what we were finding was concluding the same outcome as Lancaster. They had significant legacy of total P levels being found across the samples. Quite a good average of around phosphate index 3, 36 parts per million of available P, which is considered Olsen P under nutrient planning, and then an average of just under 700 milligrams per kilogram of total P, with some quite high exceptions to that rule. So you can see some fairly high outliers on the right hand side, which may be correct. We would have to retest and double check, but that could be potentially contaminated by where a muck heap was located several years ago, or possibly the way the samples were handled. If they had just washed their hands, even, you could get quite a lot of contamination. So I'm not saying that we don't have particularly high results like that, but when you get a really high result, much higher than everybody else, it's always worth retesting that one, I think. Our data was really showing a moderate relationship between total P and available P, whereas the Lancaster phase 3 study funded by the EA was indicating a bit of a stronger relationship. They were finding that about 4% of the total phosphorus was available as Olsen P. They were also indicating a more linear relationship between, as Olsen P increased, then total P was increasing on a per 100 mg basis against that. So we haven't found quite that relationship, but we are seeing it's quite significant. But Olsen P is really just not a reliable indicator of what phosphorus is really in the soil, and that's what the farmers have really taken away from this. Is we just had no idea that that is there, and we really need to understand how we can access it. Next slide, please. So a lot of this has left us with more questions than answers. As soon as you give them their results, they come back with lots of questions. How do I access that? Is it being lost in the same way from different soil types? Or if my organic matter level is higher on a particular field than another one, is the management history a big factor in that? Where does that risk really come to light? Is it because it's underdrained? Is it from runoff? Does compaction have an influence on it? Is it worse after storm events? These are just some of the questions that the farmers, having seen that data, are asking and need answers to. So they're also then thinking, what do I do in practice to reduce losses and access that legacy P? So if I reduce my inputs, do I need to do something to soil structure? Is there a way I can time applications to reduce those losses? They are thinking of it in a really practical way, and hopefully we'll be working with the UWE team to really try and narrow out how we get answers to those very specific questions for the why. Next slide. So we're obviously looking at working with those farmers to answer some of those questions on behalf of their own businesses, but we think for the whole catchment it would be very pertinent to know, if we're doing production monitoring with yield and crop quality, and then we're tracking nutrient offtake and the nutrient balance of the holding, can we reduce those excesses in a short or medium or long term, and how does that relate to water losses? What are those risks? How do we identify the highest risk fields and where we should be acting at haste? And what are the most effective interventions? Is it around structure or organic matter? Those are the things that they really want to know. So we're obviously looking forward to trying to see how many of those questions can be answered in the living labs that are due to start any minute. I think that's my last slide, everybody.
Thanks very much, Kate. Again, this is another really good project. And thanks, I think, to the farmers who've taken this on and helped out here. Good for them. There are so many things that are starting to come together that I find myself going, oh, and then that person needs to talk to this person, and if we manage to fold that into this, and then we wind up. So there are questions that you're asking as a result of this project. Some of the answers might be sitting in the later presentation around gypsum, or might be sitting with the work that's being done around mycorrhizal fungi in terms of releasing, either holding or releasing nutrients. So whether there's something that we can work at, as we are partnership and, working across, that we try to kind of join these things up. So we're not doing tests on a land drain in one field and tests on a land drain 2 fields away, and we could have just done it all in the one spot. There would be benefits, I think, to sort of trying to join up a little bit there. I think it's really important, this understanding, and I think we've touched on it a few times this meeting, that we have to get away from phosphate. There's a reason that we look at that, and with nutrient neutrality, there's a particular area of pain that goes with that. But in terms of the river, we have to look at things far more holistically, also the nitrogen question. And this is a really important piece of work about moving that conversation on. So we're looking not just at inputs, but also accumulation, and how do we run it down? How do we use it? How do we stop it getting into the environment? So very, very good, and looking forward to see. Hopefully this goes on using the Living Lab, and we get more deeper, better knowledge about this accumulation. But where we can join that up with other things going on, I think we will wind up with an incredible data set. So I'll just leave that with you. Okay, any questions or comments from anyone? Louise?
Thanks, Kate. Great presentation. I knew farmers were having trouble accessing the legacy phosphate, hence applications of fertiliser, but I didn't think that the relationship and how to access it wasn't well understood. I thought that was just difficult to implement, because I think that I think it's quite well understood in the science, within soil science, how to access that phosphate in terms of having a healthy soil structure that air and water can move through, and high levels of organic matter, so that there are good fungal populations, because the fungi enable the plants to access the phosphate in the soil as kind of in the same way they have for millions of years before humans invented fertilizer. So I didn't think that, I can appreciate that not all farmers might know that, or that it might not be easy to do that on a normal farm where you are applying fertilizer each year, or glyphosate, and you don't have, earthworms or the same soil structure because of heavy machinery, etc. But I don't understand why the questions that are being raised aren't just answered, because I thought we know that about soil. Can't we just teach farmers what they need to do to access that phosphorus as a free fertiliser?
Yeah, I think the principles are understood, but perhaps the methods, the methods are a million, that famous quote. Some of the farms engaged in this are really engaged. They are regenerative already. Their soils are really active, but we aren't able to quantify immediately what that relationship is. And perhaps this was a one-off sampling event. Actually, if we knew they were all not applying P and we retested in 2 years' time, would that result be different as a result of it? This is just a flash in the pan, so it is only a limited study, and we can only draw quite limited conclusions from it. But I think you're right. Some of the actions that we know we need to do are well understood, but the impact of them isn't. And if indeed the reaction needs to be rapid and fast in order to ensure we don't lose nutrients and the river recovers in a really speedy fashion, we need to understand what we should be prioritising, because it's often not practical or even feasible to do all things at once. And those sorts of transitions of changing soil from perhaps depleted to really alive can take quite a long time. So if there are actions that we can take to speed up that process and make sure we're reacting in an appropriate speed, then I think that's where we're really trying to get the answers.
Thank you. I'm feeling the river move now, that it's a really human way of thinking. We are making that human error of looking for the solution instead of recognizing that it's a suite of interrelating factors that are all happening together, interacting with each other in very complex ways, and all of them are influencing this access to phosphorus in this case. It's not a piece of advice we can give to a farmer to say, do this first, this will work best. It's all of those things are needed. I think it's a really holistic answer.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's, you know, the interesting dynamics is if it was farming saying, this is really complex and we're going to have to do lots of things and it's going to take a long time, it would be perceived as kind of like, oh, they're putting it off, they're trying to make it that we can't do it. So I think the fact that you're observing that is really key, because it does reiterate just how difficult this could be. There are lots of marginal gains to be made, whether it's livestock feed, whether it's soil health, you know, whether we need to put interventions downstream of high risk fields, whether those are wetlands or other things, so that we can make immediate positive impact on water quality while those longer term holistic things are enacted in field. You know, there's lots of opportunities there.
Just to say, as a farmer who tests for biology, who uses gypsum and biological inputs across the board, what this hopefully will provide us is actually some of those answers that accelerate it. Because to take your point, it is absolutely holistic, but it's also about management choices in those moments. And to take something very specific, we are told that certain plants are able to mine P better and then make it more available potentially for other cropping. But actually the truth is under what management do we optimize that? Which plants are potentially better for that? There's a bit of nuance in amongst it that actually if farmers did have those answers, particularly on our quite unique soils, then actually the change can be much quicker, even with the information that we already know.
I mean, there's kind of joining up thing. That I mean, one of your comments about biomass is growing it out, in other words, but then also been, having conversations around pyrolysis. There's a market there. There's particular biomass that works particularly well to create particular biochar, which is of enormous benefit. That's a market, and so I think we kind of need to join some of these dots up and wind up in a very good place for the farmers to not only be accessing using this legacy, but using it in a way that creates something that is also beneficial, as well as clearly carbon offsetting and other things. So I think there are kind of conversations that need to be had outside the meeting, because probably get a bit too detailed. Right, has anyone got anything else on this? Okay, just going to say thank you very, very much. And then anyone would think this was organised. We've now got a presentation about gypsum from Rosie Wilmot from Herefordshire Council, and the potential impact that will have. Again, this is talking about transitioning and how do you go from one place to another, and control the uptake of nutrient. So, Rosie, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Rosie Wilmot, River Health Officer at Herefordshire Council, and I've been working over the last couple of years on a number of agricultural support projects that the council has funded. I recently coordinated a short-term study on gypsum and its impact on water extractable phosphate on Herefordshire soils, partnering again with Lancaster University. We can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we've already talked about some of the kind of the unique factors of the soils in Herefordshire, and I'll sort of come on to that. But gypsum is a naturally mined product, or a naturally occurring product, mineral that can be mined in the form of calcium sulfate dihydrate. And it's also available in a number of recycled forms, including from recycled plasterboard, from construction waste. It's already widely used in agriculture, as Dan's already mentioned. He uses it on his farm. It's often used as a kind of a form of nutrients, being that calcium and sulfur are both essential nutrients for plant growth. And it's also used as a soil conditioner. It flocculates soils, improves infiltration rates, and it could be particularly useful in this context, given that Hereford has got particularly high, or the west of England's got particularly high concentrations of magnesium in the soil, and that's relevant because magnesium holds on to or does associate with phosphorus, but much more weakly than calcium ions do. So it's high in magnesium but low in calcium. So the benefit of adding the calcium to the soil can both be in terms of an agronomic perspective for plant health and growth, and also from the perspective of being able to potentially hold on to those phosphorus ions in the soil. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. Thanks. And there's already quite extensive evidence in the literature on the impact of gypsum application and how it can reduce phosphorus losses to water. The studies that are listed there and that international European Union funded project are kind of international examples. And there are examples both in terms of the lab-based trials and field-scale, field-based trials. And that international project is looking to encourage the uptake of gypsum application, both its mined form and its recycled form, to reduce the eutrophication of the Baltic Sea. So it is already kind of internationally recognised. And what we wanted to do was kind of bring that to a Herefordshire context and demonstrate that that's applicable for our soils here. Thanks very much, and go to the next slide. So we took 4 samples of soils from 4 different farms across the catchment, or across Hereford, the Herefordshire part of the catchment, and sent those soils up to Lancaster for 3 different applications of gypsum. So we looked at 1 tonne, 3 tonnes and 5 tonne application rates, or the equivalent of across those soil samples. I think so we can actually go to the next slide, thank you. And we looked at specifically the water extractable phosphorus and the plant available phosphorus, and how those different application rates affected those elements of the soil compared to a control for each soil type. Thanks, we can go to the next slide again, thank you. And what we found was measurable and statistically significant reductions in water extractable phosphorus. So this really just mirrored what we were expecting to find based on what we saw in the literature already. But it really, call me sad, but I got quite excited when I saw these charts, because on the left-hand side there, or the green chart, you've got the plant available phosphorus, which wasn't changed by the application of gypsum, and then you've got in the blue there A being the control, B, C and D being the 1, 3 and 5 tonne applications, a significant reduction in the phosphorus that was lost to water. We can go to the next slide, thank you. There was some variation between the application rates, and the different soil types responded differently, and we were only testing for that water extractable phosphorus and the plant available phosphorus, so there are limitations. It is a lab-based trial. It doesn't, the soils weren't under real life conditions, and as I say, we only measured those 2 variables, so other things could have been at play, magnesium content, the already calcium content, but what we can say is that the soils that had the higher baseline phosphorus were most responsive to the applications of gypsum. We can go next, thank you. And really happily we've secured funding for a field scale trial. So we'd like to look at a 12-month trial of a single application of gypsum, and looking at how in real world conditions that application affects the water-based, or the water extractable and the plant available phosphorus, but expand that to looking at other indices as well. So looking at pH, although our understanding is that shouldn't be changed by gypsum application, as well as total phosphorus, nitrogen and carbon content, looking as well at that magnesium ratio, and as well looking at how the infiltration rates are affected by gypsum. Like I say, it's already used widely in agriculture for improving soil flocculation, and we're interested to see how just the co-benefit of that application also impacts infiltration rates. Going into this trial, we're also aware of the limitations in the use of recycled gypsum, being that above 1 tonne a hectare, you have to have a waste to land spreading licence. So we're conscious of that, and sort of considering that as we go into this next stage. But that's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rosie. And I'm just going to give a name check to Ben Taylor Davis.
Yes, thank you.
Who out of whose mighty brain this idea first came to us. So gratitude to him and to all the farmers who work with us. Right, have we got any questions? We're all just completely blown away by that. Anybody? No? I mean, I mean, I look at that and I think, okay, well, what that sounds like to me, and I'm a lay person really, you know, is that you get some stuff and you apply it to your land, and it will potentially, according to how much you apply in the land you apply, to up to 35% reduction in losses of phosphorus. I mean, it kind of sounds like a little bit like a magic bullet.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Just to sort of caveat that it is a lab-based trial, so we are, you know, we're really hopeful that we'll be able to demonstrate that in the real sort of on the farm conditions as well. But it's really exciting. And as I say, that graph was
Because what's the timeline on next steps?
So we're looking for, we've engaged again with Lancaster as the academic partner, and we're going to be engaging with the consultant that will be sort of doing that spreading with that land spreading licence if we go for the recycled gypsum option. But we're hoping to have everything lined up to have that application happening in autumn. That sort of aligns with kind of the farming calendar and when it's appropriate application time, and then it will be a 12-month project from that point.
Great, it's exciting. Dan?
Just a quick question going forward. I'm wondering whether you could put some financial analysis onto that as well. You know, if you average £25 a tonne for recycled gypsum, actually what that means in terms of yield and potential value in P as well. Maybe just that may be a persuader later on in a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be really key for us to be able to articulate, like you say, to like the farming community that this is not just beneficial for, you know, the river and the waters, but it's also beneficial for the bottom line, and you know, yeah, those co-benefits are really sort of critical for that communication piece. So yeah, we will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that looking at other co-benefits, really, really interesting. Pat?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Rosie. I almost feel bad about raising this again, but first I want to say that's a brilliantly designed approach, and it looks like the next step is brilliantly designed as well, and the results are looking great. So just wanted to say, really love it. I'll risk being end up being called Nitro Boy or something out of this, but yeah, obviously, you know, we've heard it many times. I think it bears repeating, though, that we know that phosphate's not really the only problem. It's not to say that it's not a problem. It is not the only problem, and we're not sure whether it's the worst problem or the limiting problem. In fact, we've got relative confidence from the work done by the team down in Cardiff that it is not the limiting problem for the Wye anymore. So I was just having a look at the purpose of the Nutrient Management Board, and just wanted to repeat that something that is written here, which is that we as the board cannot make any decisions. This lies with the statutory organisations via the Statutory Officers Group, and that our role is to influence, advise and challenge the proposals, plans and decisions and actions. So I wanted to say, I think I've heard some amazing things to influence and advise those things today. And then in my role as being on the Nutrient Management Board, I want to challenge where we are with the overall looking at river health, and challenge whether, you know, because it's so brilliant to see these things in train, which are clearly doing, you know, doing and are hopefully going to do some wonderful things around phosphorus. But we risk real problems if we take our eye off the overall ball. And so I want to say this is brilliant, and I want to see this sort of brilliance around nitrogen and ammonia, you know, and sediment, and that's key. And I know that's not technically a nutrient, but we also know that sediment itself is a real impact on the river. Talk to anyone who spends any time with it, you know, you know how much it's causing an issue. So holding things on the land, holding soil on the land is such a critical thing, and that's obviously, Dan's nodding, because who wouldn't want to keep their soil is the other thing. So so on that note, and I ask the chair if the agenda has already got this covered, but I'd like to sort of formally challenge our statutory officer group to take this on board and come back to this board with a you know, and we have heard that there are going to be targets at some point in the future, potentially maybe around nitrogen, but Can we bring it forward? What can we do to try to get all of this great thinking more aligned around the full picture? Thank you.
Yeah, shall I come back on that? Thank you for that. Tempted not to call you Nitro Boy, but I think it's going to stick now. So yeah, I mean, the presentations today have been fantastic, really, really informative, and they do, I think, the holistic approach about soil health, keeping soil on the field, engaging with farmer business, looking at the whole picture is absolutely fundamental for the solutions as well as addressing the problems. I think in terms of looking at the target, yes, I can certainly take the pressure away from this. We're very aware of the research from Cardiff, but I suppose the other thing I would like to point out is let's not, by doing that, take our eye off phosphate, especially shout out for the River Lug. The River Lug is failing its phosphate target astronomically, and phosphate is still on the Lug the biggest issue in terms of it failing condition, along with sediment. So we just have to be careful not to go, oh, we were wrong, it's all about, and I know you're not doing that at all. It's about looking the whole picture in the round. We will take the research back, as well as look at the research that Huskins are doing and look at whether we think a nitrogen target will be beneficial in terms of achieving the health of the river. That's what's important. Will it help us in terms of improving the health of the river? And that's what our river specialists and others will look at, and they will review and look at that evidence, and we have undertaken a commitment to do that.
Thank you. Yeah. I just wanted to check in with the NRW, because we didn't hear them earlier. Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Anne.
Shall I go? I know Georgie's had a hand up for a while. Shall I go?
You go, Anne. It was another point.
So we have targets for ammonia for our SACs, and the River Wye is well within the ammonia target. But I don't think NRW has ever believed that, you know, we should only ever be looking at one nutrient or one element of the whole SAC assessment. So totally, you know, with you there, Pat. It's, you know, it's the whole health of the river that's important. It's not just P that's important. So you're you know, we don't need convincing, just to reassure you. You know, we've already got some of our marine SACs that are sort of failing for nitrates, and there's quite a lot of work going on now on the marine SACs in Wales. So yeah, it's not off our radar.
And this
Thanks,
might.
Anne. No, sorry, Pat.
No, okay.
We need to move on. Andrew and then Georgie. Oh, sorry, Georgie. Georgie.
Sorry, just a quick one. Thank you very much for the gypsum presentation. It's just if we're working with farmers, the waste permits have just changed, and whether we could just work with farmers to make sure they've got the right things in place when they're storing and spreading it, just whether that could be tied into some of the practical working.
Yeah, absolutely right. The permitting is a critical element, which I think we are aware of.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. Yeah.
But thanks for that, Georgie. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. This has been the best, most collaborative nutrient management board I think I've ever been to. So I'd just like to get that on the agenda. I want to support Pat on nitrate, because if any of you haven't seen the Danish webinar about where the Danish government have moved to, do have a look at it. Their focus is almost entirely on nitrate, very little mention of phosphate. Now, they've got different issues, but I think that just to pick up, and sorry to pick on a point that you made, Claire, yes, the lug is failing for phosphate, but from our citizen science, I can tell you it is massively failing for nitrate as well, very, very high levels of nitrate. So we shouldn't, whilst I don't want to take the eye off phosphate, I think we just got to broaden our perspective to say, you know, we've got evolving information now that is suggesting that nitrate is a real issue for us, and we just need to be very certain that we're looking at that just as carefully as Pat has asked. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I think we're all broadly on the same page with that now. So thank you very much. Thanks for that, Rosie. Right, so we're moving on to agenda item 10, which is the 9 update from the River Wye Statutory Officer Group. Over to you, Gemma.
I'm yet again representing the Statutory Officers Group today. Sorry, my microphone's being a bit weird. Does that sound okay? Yeah. Too close, right? A bit further away. Hi everyone, Gemma Dando from Herefordshire Council. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Council and the Council's representative on the Statutory Officers Group. This is my, I think, second or third Nutrient Management Board meeting. And in the last couple of meetings, we've received some feedback from the board, both about the presentations and the information that the Statutory Officers Group bring to these meetings, and also the relationship and the role of the Statutory Officers Group. So in between meetings, we've been meeting as the Statutory Officers Group to look at the role of the group, particularly given that by the autumn we're going to have a new nutrient management plan with an action plan, and it's going to be absolutely critical for the statutory organisations and the statutory officers to have a clearly defined role, a clearly defined relationship between the board and the group itself, a really good way of presenting and bringing information to the group that's the right information at the right level at the right time. And that's one of the things that we know that we weren't getting right given the feedback of the board. So since the last meeting, we've looked through our terms of reference, the purpose of the group, checked that the membership of the group is right. So we're covering all of the different organisations that have a role to play, particularly in the delivery of the coming nutrient management plan. And we've also checked in with ourselves about what we can offer and what we're going to need to do. So so like I said, we've changed the terms of reference. We've checked that we've got the right people at the right level on the group. About a week ago, we brought what we'd come up with to Alyssa to start thinking about that relationship between this board and the Statutory Officers Group. What we realised that we need to do next is have a get-together between now and the next Nutrient Management Board meeting with some of the representatives of the board, so that we can have that deeper conversation about what are you going to need from us moving forward, as the Nutrient Management Board's going to be, I suppose, oversee and own the nutrient management plan. The Statutory Officers Group, each organisation is going to have a role to play in delivering that plan. There'll be others as well, so there will be other people and other organisations that have also got a role to play. And I think we've heard quite a lot of interesting research today. So there's a conversation to have about how do we bring that together. Alyssa suggested some other sorts of collaborations. But what we'd really like to do is come back to the next meeting with a mutually agreed way of working that we can agree on at the next board. So by the time it's the board after that and we're adopting the nutrient management plan, we know exactly what we're going to be doing together. But like I said, particularly A, how we're going to work and communicate, and B, what information we're going to bring here that's got real value, that's really focused on nutrients, because that's the purpose of the board, and that uses everybody's time in the best possible way. So my request from the Statutory Officers Group is for a small group of members of the Nutrient Management Board to meet with a small group of the Statutory Officers Group and thrash that out between now and the next meeting, so we've got a proposal to bring here. We're really happy to share our terms of reference. It might be Pat read out the terms of reference of the Nutrient Management Board. I think it would be interesting to check in to see whether they're still valid for the coming times, and like I keep referring back to the plan because I think that's going to guide us over future years, I suppose. So it'd be really interesting to jointly look at that and come back with some proposals next time. So volunteers, please.
We've got one, Pat Sterling. Thank you. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Any other? Andrew Rob? Yeah. Anyone else? You can count me in, obviously.
Yeah, thanks. If there is anybody else that you think of, then we can adopt them, and we can. I'll get some dates in the diary. I'll ask someone from the council to set that up, and we can move forward. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Okay, so now we have wider updates from members of the board. So I have an update, slightly unusual in nature, which is about a charter for the River Wye. This is something that has been approved by full council, Herefordshire Council, and we now have a drafted charter which acknowledges the rights of the river, which is being agreed or is in process of being agreed by all of the local authorities in the catchments, as Powys and Monmouthshire, Herefordshire, Forest of Dean, Van Ibraheniog, the National Landscape, which is, as far as I'm aware, the first time an entire catchment at that level has got something of that nature agreed, which is outstanding. So the rights that were in the document which started off as what's called a notice of motion brought to the council: the right to flow and perform natural functions, the right to biodiversity, the right to be free from pollution, the right to be supported by a healthy catchment, the right to regenerate, the right to representation. And the charter will have will be launched on an event at the Warren in Hay on the 24th. Hopefully you will all have had invitations. It'd be great if you're there. It'd be great if you're there as individuals, as people, representing organisations, whatever. It's all good. There's no you don't have to do it. You can just watch, enjoy, be by the river, be with the event. If you feel moved to take on the charter individually, you can do that. If you want to do it on behalf of your organisation, also that is possible. There will be a ceremony which is being organised by Wye Straker, who's sitting at the end of the table there, who's our Wye ceremonialist. And yeah, I mean, hopefully it will be just a beautiful moment where we can just be human and feel our relationship with nature and the river, and make that our lodestar for that time. So yeah, so I wanted you all to know that, and to invite you all, and to hope that you'll all be there, and you know that we all care about the river. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. So it's just a moment where we can say that out loud. I don't think, has anyone got anything? Louise, do you want to say anything?
I was just going to ask, do we know who will be there? Will NRW or, you know, EA, Natural England be there, or send someone along?
Hi, unfortunately I'm in Scotland, so I'm really
Lovely
sorry I
rivers
can't
there
be
too.
But we are working certainly in terms of joining up our comms around it as well. So Natural England will support the charter, but we'll utilise our communications to support the event.
That's fantastic. Anybody else want to say anything? No? Okay, good.
Can I just check what the date was, please?
It's the
Sorry.
24th of May.
And have we been? Is there an invite that's gone somewhere?
Should have had one. I'm looking at Rosie now.
I think some of the sort of Welsh representatives on the working group that put together the charter might be sending out invitations to their sort of Welsh stakeholders. So if you haven't received one, I can more than happy to send one. But
Yeah, I don't think Anne, you were on my list, but I'm just not ducking it there.
Yeah, this didn't ring any bells with me. So
No.
If you send me some details through, Liz, I'll
Yeah,
I'll
okay,
see
I'll
whether
catch up with
we can
Rosie now. Okay.
All right, thanks, Liz.
Yeah, I knew there was a reason I needed to say this out loud in the meeting. That's great, thank you. Well, you know, be lovely to see you all there. Right, have we got any other updates from other board members? Oh, Catherine. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, sorry, I've been multitasking and I've been missing bits. Yeah, just to say, sorry, I didn't realise it was up to us to be sending invites out to the regulatory agencies. So apologies for that. I'm
Only the
I'm
Welsh
going to be
one.
away in May, but our leader's going to attend. So I've been a bit distracted. I'm so sorry. But and also just to say that I'm hoping to get the charter through council, but we actually didn't have a council meeting in April, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to get it into the AGM in May, but full intention to do it as soon as we get a chance on the council agenda, and I expect it will be well received. So I'm not expecting it to be contentious. So the intention is there, not completed in terms of the paperwork yet.
It's all right. The main thing is we know you'll get there, and
Yeah.
and councils will have their own processes that they need to get through, and we acknowledge and accept that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Catherine. I think there will be a written Martin.
Was it possible to give a very brief update, mindful of the time? So it's really just to let you know a bit of an update. So we have done a growing season report for last year. So those of you who are familiar, I know Pat, you're familiar with it. Last year and the year before, we sort of hybrid the documents because effectively there were two wet summers, so they were giving us the same findings. We have done a full report for this year, and that will be available on our external webpage in the next couple of weeks. So that's looking at the full year of our ecological surveys and the algal survey work. So I will flag once it's launched. And then the other thing is that the web page, we've made it a bit more user friendly. I think those that use it's too many layers in it, so you'll see a new refreshed look to that. So it's just to let you know that we have got a bit of a development in terms of our agricultural regulation. So we've just appointed an agricultural enforcement lead. So that person will take the overview of our enforcement of agriculture across West Midlands. We are also piloting a trial on fixed penalty notices. It's happened elsewhere in the country, so we're going to see how that could work within this catchment. And we're also going through a process whereby we're going to start risk rating a lot of the agricultural actions we give to farmers to make sure that we've got a clear understanding of the scale in terms of what are those at the top risk versus those at the low risk. Now, there are many aspects that are really obvious. So where you've got, slurry infrastructure, but then you get this sort of linear piece in between. So that makes sure it's much more scalable in terms of which ones need the attention and the focus. The enforcement lead will take the overview of that. And once we've got a bit more information on both of those, we'll be able to share it further.
Very good. Thank you. Louise?
Sort of an update. I just wanted to mention, I'm sure many of you have seen it, if people have been following what's been happening around the world with nitrogen levels or ways of managing that, just bring up again the Danish case study, because I think it's really interesting. And they have a very similar situation to the UK, and are trying to reduce their river pollution through a carbon tax, livestock reduction, nutrient regulations throughout the catchment, which are coming up to based on the catchment base quotas. So that's a carrying capacity of the catchment for all nutrients. I'm not going to use the word nitrogen or phosphorus. I'm just going to say nutrients, because I like to include silt in that, because I think obviously it's really key and it's in the soil. And I don't know, I know we have targets for ammonia and so on for the rivers, but I don't know whether we have this already and whether we could create it. Because I think it relates well to the farm level data that you're creating at the moment. If we know how much the river can cope with, and we know what farms are producing and where the levels are, we could create a quota system, a trading scheme or something like that, to start actively reducing the levels in the catchment. So I think it's something to watch what happens and something to consider here as part of our nutrient management plan and the catchment management plan, whether we can include this.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar to the Poole Harbour, isn't it? It's the same thing. Anne Weedy. Anne, do you want to come in?
Yeah, no, it's just really sort of updates from sort of NRW, and I am sort of
Yep.
very conscious of time now, and I can send a little written note through to Ben so that he can include it in the minutes. But if there'll be a couple of links coming through. So first one really is on some updated guidance that we've put on our website around managing livestock manures and slurries. It's really just a sort of reminder around when the sort of controls around manures that are classed as waste come in. So and what farmers should and shouldn't be doing with manures that are waste. I'll also put a link in there. There's a new newsletter there for the Upper Wye Catchment Restoration Project. So that's the big project that's been going on the Upper Wye Catchment. And then just a bit of good news. So I've got some funding for a new role, and I think I'll call it a Wye Catchment Officer or something along those lines. And it will really be sort of be a senior officer. Going to provide us some support for engagement, so engagement with all of these projects that's going on, because that's actually quite hard to keep hold of with the current resources that we've got, and also just to kind of try and coordinate some targeted campaign work on the Wye as well. And and it may well be that some of the actions that come out of the nutrient management plan can feed into some of that sort of targeted campaign work. So we're about to start recruitment for that role, so in the next sort of week or so. So just a bit of, it's a 12-month post at the moment. We can't secure any funding beyond this current financial year, with the uncertainties around what's going on with Welsh Gov and the elections next week. So but hope is that will not just be a 12-month role. I just can't guarantee that right now. But I can send Ben a little note on that, and he can add it into the minutes.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. We've also got there's a couple of other notes from Herefordshire Council which can be appended, covering progress of the LNRS. And we also have this. The Friends of the River Wye produced the Riverside Code, which is a really, really lovely booklet. Okay. Have any other updates from anyone? Andrew.
Just a real quick one, and it's thanks to 18 farmers in Herefordshire. We have a Hedgerow Heroes project. We worked with 18 farmers this year, and we have planted more hedgerows than any other county in England. So the farmers should be praised for accessing that land. Great result. And it was, should say, it was probably close to, I think we were well over 10 kilometres. So it was a good test.
That's outstanding. Thank you. Okay, so just to say the dates of the future meetings are on the agenda, the next one being the 24th of June. Thank you all very much for your attendance today in person and online. And I now close the meeting.